The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope everybody had a good weekend. All right, I thought I would start the week off with something my man 50 Cent posted, which is funny, and this time it's not about P. Diddy. But he posted a picture of former NBA superstar Gilbert Arenas. I think he went by Agent Zero because he wore the number 0. But it says, former NBA star Gilbert Arenas proposed to his girl with a $400,000 ring. Then they broke up 8 days later. They eventually made up, and he faked the relationship with her for 4 months so he could switch the ring out with a fake version. She then sued him and lost. Man, Agent Zero, Gilbert Arenas, getting crafty. That's funny. I'm telling you, 50 Cent posts some hilarious stuff. And we definitely need a little comedy injection with the way things are going. Anyway, all right, I want to talk about a couple things today. And, again, I think by now, hopefully we're at a point in this podcast, and especially for those of you that have listened, for a long time now and kind of gone through the various cycles of the various stories and things, that I hope it is pretty evident that, fundamentally, again, I don't want to sound redundant, but I'm going to for a minute, but, we're calling a spade on stuff. And the realization I had over the weekend, because actually I got some really nice calls from some folks that bought the book, and they literally, my one friend Randy read it in 2 days. He's like, dude, this was awesome. He's like, I read it for 4 hours one day and then 2 hours the next. He's like, I read it in 6 hours. I was like, man, you're a slow reader. I read it in 4 hours. No, I'm just kidding. But the conversation we had, and, really, it was actually really cool because, again, obviously I asked him his opinion, and I said, hey, don't hold back. I can take constructive feedback. I can take negative feedback for that matter. And he said, no, he said, I really, obviously I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it. And, he's been a listener of the podcast the entire time. So he's like, I saw the various elements that you wound through the book from the podcast and all that. And he's like, fundamentally for me, and he used the word nuggie. He's like, the biggest nuggie that I've taken from the podcast, but especially now from the book, is he's like, dude, I love calling a spade on people. And I do it on my wife all the time. He said, so I advised him against, that. We had a good laugh over it. He said, no, to be honest, he's like, I just love the philosophy behind that, because again, I don't have to always even act on it, but fundamentally, he's like, I really am judging people with a much clearer lens when I'm willing to call a spade on them. And again, a lot of times, this is him talking, he said, a lot of times I don't even verbalize it. And it's not that, I hold it against somebody or whatever. But again, I have that lens now. And, that really came through from the book as well. And then fundamentally, he's like, I really, I'm going to really try and start to also look at some of these things through your pillars and this and that. So anyway, I thought that was very cool. And the reason I'm sharing that is not because it makes me feel good, but because, some of the things I have a feeling that I'm going to talk about moving forward, and especially as we get closer to the election, I mean, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. It is. And I don't even want to say I'm sorry about that, because I'm really not, because I'm going to call a spade. And, if it rubs you the wrong way, and if there's a particular issue that we might be on different sides on, feel free to call me out on anything. And especially if you feel like I'm getting emotional and personal about something. So the point of all this is that I really think there's going to be some things that are going to hit the fan here pretty soon. And so, it's going to cause me to, just come down on the side of right or wrong. And last week when I did that podcast interview, one of the questions or one of the things we were talking about was, we were talking about these pillars and all that. And then my friend Nancy, whose podcast I went on, she said, well, how do you apply your methodology or pillars to, let's say, a pedophile or a child molester? How do you empathize with that person? And I said, hey, listen, you're right. I don't empathize with anyone that's done either one of those two things. And so, at the end of the day, it's not that whether you're using the pillars or whether you're using the deep shallow dive methodology or whatever you're calling a spade, don't lose sight of the fact that there is still, and there always will be, there's right and there's wrong, okay? There is right and there is wrong, and we can never lose sight of that. We can't justify everything with a methodology or even calling a spade or anything, because if there is things that happen that are wrong, it's almost like those things lose the ability for us to have empathy toward them, because fundamentally something like, awful examples like child molestation and, God, I don't even like saying those words, to be honest, but those things are wrong, and there's no justification for that, and there's no empathy for that, and there's no anything for that. So it's like they're automatically disqualified. But I will say, moving on, that what is going on these college universities? It's really getting violent pretty fast. And I don't know if you guys saw any of these videos over the weekend, but there was a gosh, she must have been in her 60s, an older white lady professor who was basically just walking through campus, and the police this was at Emory University. I believe Emory's in Atlanta. Is Emory in Atlanta? Emory is in Atlanta. It's an HBCU. Historically Black college and university. All right, so I don't know if you saw this, but man, this was insane. So she was basically coming to the rescue of students, and I don't know what's going on with the cops, man. They're like, and I'm a big fan of the blue. They're like gone militant, like they are like putting a beating to these kids. It's just, I don't know how parents are not losing their minds when they see this stuff. But basically, she stepped over to say, hey, you don't have to treat the kid like that. And the cop, he was not having anything. So it was her and then another professor. And again, I don't know if you guys have seen the video, but man, it was violent. And these are two like older white women whom, again, maybe they're Karens, but no, they're actually not even Karens. Obviously they're not able to inflict any type of physical harm on a police officer. And so, it was pretty intense until she was arrested, and then they interviewed her when I guess she was released from jail. And, she basically was just like, hey, I'm a mom and I'm a professor here, and I saw what I just deemed unacceptable, students standing there expressing their free speech, and the police, they were putting a beat down on these kids, like pretty crazy how it went from 0 to 100, not even so fast, but like almost immediately. Anyway, it was pretty bad. And then there was one in Germany. Again, it's very, the police have gotten very violent on this, but these protests are, they are not going to stop. They are not going to stop. Like, it's going to intensify. You've got graduations being canceled. somebody pointed this out to me over the weekend, and man, I didn't piece it together, and I wonder if you guys have. So this graduating class, this class of 2024, remember, they had their high school graduation of 2020 canceled because of COVID. And so now, can you imagine if all these universities take away their collegiate graduation for 2024? That is awful. Oh my God. Imagine being a kid and having your high school and your college graduation taken away. Man, that is not fair. All right, let me stop yapping for a second and play a couple things from a couple people that have been on the pod a lot. Let's start with RFK Jr.
You guys have probably all heard about the impending TikTok ban. I want to say that this decision is a catastrophe for free speech and a disaster for the thousands of young people who love TikTok and even make their living there. I also think it's unconstitutional. They say that it's about China harvesting your data. That is a smokescreen because, you know what? The intelligence agencies from lots of countries, especially ours, are harvesting your data from everywhere all the time. TikTok isn't even a majority Chinese-owned company, and the company agreed to put the data behind a U.S. firewall. Well, the Biden administration rejected that deal. They don't understand that TikTok is an entrepreneurial platform, a gateway for thousands of American young people who want to practice entrepreneurship. They want to screw those kids over just to pretend that they're tough on China. So what I'm going to do right now is to file a lawsuit seeking to overturn this law on First Amendment grounds. TikTok users shouldn't have to wait till I'm president to keep using TikTok.
All right, a couple quick thoughts on this. First of all, do you guys think he has a chance? I mean, seriously, does he have a chance actually? I feel like right now with Biden, man, he is like under such scrutiny with the way he's handled this Gaza situation. I mean, he's completely lost the entire Muslim and, to an extent, a big chunk of the ethnic vote. I don't know how big that is, but he's definitely lost that. And then when it comes to the student vote, I mean, think about that. You know, one of the reasons why I think they've done this student debt forgiveness program, I hate to say it, is to buy votes. And, you know, obviously, if you're a young person and he relieves you from your student debt, you're probably going to vote for him. You're probably going to be like, oh, dude, that was like super cool. I appreciate that. Hell yeah, I'm voting for you. So now, though, with what is taking place at these college campuses and just quite frankly, the attack that these students are under for, again, in my opinion, you know, expressing their free speech and expressing their humanitarian views. Now, again, I know there's bad actors in all this, and I'm not saying even the non-bad actors, I'm not saying they're all doing it correctly. I mean, you're talking about 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. They're not going to get everything right. But fundamentally, again, trust me on this, I've watched enough videos online from, you know, credible news organizations that to me shows what's really going on there versus the few crazy videos that I see primarily on Fox, and it's really the Republican right-wing news stations that broadcast that stuff. But anyway, my point is Biden's definitely under the gun from, you know, the ethnic side of things, and then now from the younger generation. But then both of those sides, they're not big fans of Trump. So I don't know. Does RFK Jr. have a chance? I have not thought so. I really haven't, but I don't know. I'd be curious to your opinion on that. And then anyway, on the TikTok thing, you know, last thought on this, you know, TikTok blew up ironically during COVID. It was COVID when it took on extreme popularity. And then at that time, it became popular for stupid reasons, like stupid dance videos and TikTok trends and like the dumb stuff that a lot of people still think is the core competency of TikTok. But it evolved, it pivoted, and it literally became the foundation for young people to express their opinions and share their truths and do their research. And again, if you've never spent any time on TikTok, I mean, I'm not saying go spend time on it, but trust me when I tell you, I've spent a ton of time on there. And again, it's unbelievable the level of credible, well-researched, well thought out opinions from everybody, really, but really from that younger generation. I mean, it blows my mind. I overthink anytime I want to shoot video, and I'll put something on TikTok and it'll get like 1,000 views. And I'm like, geez, what a pain in the ass for 1,000 views. And then some 15-year-old kid like turns his camera around and he's in his bedroom and his hair's going 12,000 directions and he just starts spitting truth, and dude gets like 800,000 views. I'm like, good for you, man. Good for you. You didn't even have to put on a vest and you got all those views. Anyway, my point is TikTok has really pivoted from what it started out. And, I do think that is something a lot of U.S. lawmakers and quote unquote people are not happy about. They don't want the truth to be as accessible. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's how I'm seeing it. That's really how I'm seeing it. So anyway, there is an intertwining of TikTok into what's going on. We'll see what happens with, this potential ban and all of that. I really think this college university stuff is going to get worse. I think it's going to be intertwined with TikTok. Maybe it becomes the methodology they use to finally, remove TikTok from the app stores or make the parent company divest the U.S. interests. Who knows? We'll see about that. But I definitely think that's in the mix as well. And then, all right, we've heard from Bernie Sanders before. Here he is again. And again, the reason I play Bernie is because I think he has credibility when it comes to this issue. I really do. I'm not really a Bernie fan, but I think he has credibility when it comes to speaking about Israel, because he's Jewish, and it's really not even Israel. He's really targeted on Netanyahu. Give a listen.
No, Mr. Netanyahu, it is not anti-Semitic or pro-Hamas to point out that in a little over 6 months, your extremist government has killed 34,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 78,000, 70% of whom are women and children. It is not anti-Semitic to point out that your bombing has completely destroyed more than 221,000 housing units in Gaza, leaving more than 1 million people homeless, almost half the population.
These numbers are insane. I mean, insane. And again, just to stress, this is Bernie, and he's really going after Netanyahu and that right wing administration. No different than when Nancy Pelosi, did it. And again, I mean, we're judging the take. We're really judging the take on this stuff. Those are two people that I normally don't really agree with. But in this case, against Netanyahu, I absolutely do agree with them.
It is not anti-Semitic to note that your government has obliterated Gaza's civilian infrastructure, electricity, water, and sewage. It is not anti-Semitic to realize that your government has annihilated Gaza's healthcare system, knocking 26 hospitals out of service and killing more than 400 healthcare workers. It is not anti-Semitic to condemn your government's destruction of all of Gaza's 12 universities and 56 of its schools.
All right, let me chime in real quick. I mean, that's unbelievable. The entire infrastructure is gone, absolutely gone. And so we're going to dive into this in another episode. But that was the plan. That was the plan. Get rid of the infrastructure. And when there's no infrastructure, you really can't live there. It's not a habitat that is habitatable, you know? So I really think that was the plan, to take out infrastructure. You know, why are you bombing universities? Why are you bombing hospitals? You're bombing the electrical system. You're taking out the infrastructure.
With hundreds more damage, leaving 625,000 students with no educational opportunities. It is not anti-Semitic to agree with virtually every humanitarian organization in saying that your government, in violation of American law, has unreasonably blocked humanitarian aid coming into Gaza.
By the way, this is true also. You know, I kind of fact-checked this, and he's right. The Red Cross, Salvation Army, the United Way, Habitat for Humanity, Doctors Without Borders, name any humanitarian organization, and they all are saying the same thing. Now, when all of those humanitarian organizations, along with the United Nations, who, again, I'm not even a big fan of the United Nations, but they're all saying the same thing, there's no way all of those different, diverse, incredibly diverse in every way possible organizations are on the take from who? Hamas? I mean, come on, that just doesn't make sense.
Creating the conditions in which so many thousands of children face malnutrition and famine. Mr. Netanyahu, anti-Semitism is a vile and disgusting form of bigotry that has done unspeakable harm to many millions of people. But please, do not insult the intelligence of the American people by attempting to distract us from the immoral and illegal war policies of your extremist and racist government. Do not use anti-Semitism to deflect attention from the criminal indictment you are facing in the Israeli courts. It is not anti-Semitic to hold you accountable for your actions.
All right, so that was Bernie's, basically his response, his rebuttal, and it was in response to this.
What's happening in America's college campuses is horrific. Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. They call for the annihilation of Israel. They attack Jewish students. They attack Jewish faculty. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s. It's unconscionable. It has to be stopped. It has to be condemned, and condemned unequivocally. But that's not what happened. The response of several university presidents was shameful. Now, fortunately, state, local, federal officials, many of them have responded differently, but there has to be more. More has to be done. It has to be done not only because they attack Israel, that's bad enough. Not only because they want to kill Jews wherever they are, that's bad enough. It's also, when you listen to them, it's also because they say not only death to Israel, death to the Jews, but death to America. And this tells us that there's an anti-Semitic surge here that has terrible consequences.
So that was Netanyahu's speech. And man, that thing came under fire from a lot of people. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Obviously, I am not a fan of that guy. That guy in particular. I'm just talking about that guy. That's who I'm not a fan of. But dude is a politician. He really is. I mean, hey, I'll give him his due on that. I will give him his due on that. The problem is, though,
death to Israel, death to the Jews, death to America. I would really like to see some receipts, because the overwhelming evidence points to peaceful protests on campus, which include, of course, a large number of Jewish students. This week, the Jewish holiday of Passover began, and on many campuses, protesting Jewish students held multi-denominational seders, breaking bread with Palestinians and others to celebrate the story of the liberation of Jews from slavery in Egypt. And at Columbia University, which has been at the heart of US college pro-Palestinian activism, Jewish students and faculty explained to CNN why Benjamin Netanyahu does not speak for them.
Passover is the story of our escape from slavery in the land of Egypt. And I think we need to recognize that on Passover, it's important to stand up for oppressed people everywhere, whether they're Jewish or not.
That was a CNN story. I think I played a piece of that in the previous episode, but I have to play you this as well because I like this guy, and he uses one of the deep shallow dive pillars.
I am Jewish, and to me, Passover symbolizes perseverance and resilience. And I think this encampment encompasses those two ideals because we have seen the university take countless measures to try to suppress our student activism, and here is us persevering through that.
Perseverance and resilience. Resilience is a deep shallow dive pillar. Anyway, oh man, it's a mess. It's a messy situation. It really is. Ugh. It really is. But you know what? Unfortunately, fortunately, the only way we're going to honestly get through any of this is we've got to call a spade a spade. We've got to call a spade a spade. I mean, we really do. We really do. And again, I mean, I can't argue with some of the things, actually, all of the things Bernie Sanders said against Netanyahu. And then when I listen to Netanyahu, I mean, again, I think it's just all rhetoric from him. I think it's just all rhetoric. He is a man trying to stay out of jail, basically, and keep his job. And, you know, obviously he does have a base of supporters, but I don't know. He just comes off very disingenuous to me. Anyway, totally open to opinions. I know there are a few, and I'm probably going to get a couple from a couple people I know exactly who, but that's cool. That's good because again, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm missing an angle. So let me know. All right, that's it for today. I'm going to end on something funny. Anytime I bring up Bernie Sanders, it literally reminds me of growing up in Cleveland when the Browns were headed to the Super Bowl and we had a quarterback named Bernie Kosar. I think he was number 16. I think he wore 16, or did he wear 20? No, he wouldn't wear 20. It's a goofy number for a quarterback. Yeah, I think he wore 16. Or was it 18? Or was it 17? Anyone from Cleveland who knows what number Bernie Kosar wore, let me know. But there was a song, and I'm going to end with Bernie, Bernie. Oh, baby, how you can throw dinner. Yeah. Bernie, Bernie. Oh, baby. Super Bowl.
The ending was terrific.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, as well as via Kindle. Pick up your copy today of Deep Shallow Dive Into You, a guide to having a more authentic relationship with yourself. Turns out it is indeed true. Bro wrote a book.